Alright, this is the nearly final report on Vona's PiGrrl. There have been some issues that I'll fix on version 2 whenever I get around to doing that. This is a touchscreen TFT, but we're not really using it for any touch. There's no touch input stuff configured. Maybe I'll mess with that later, maybe not. Who cares? She doesn't. The buttons were a little sticky. This was a single pad with these buttons sticking out from it underneath that touched the switches. It was a little too rigid, even though I used the TPU to print them, which is a flexible filament. So when you hit the B, it would sometimes hit A, and when you hit Y, it would sometimes hit B, and sometimes you hit Y and it would hit A as well. So I just took that disc out and sliced it twice. So it's 4 individual sort of pizza slice pieces with the buttons sticking out. And that seems to fix most of the issues. There's a little wiggle room in there though, so now occasionally these will get twisted and get stuck when you push it. I've tightened these bolts to sort of get rid of a lot of that. Speaking of the bolts, this design did not call for bolts. It had built-in screw standoffs inside the case, but my tolerances were way off and I could not find screws small enough. So I kept destroying those standoffs. So I just drilled holes all the way through and bolted, and we're going to call it, I don't know, Cyberpunk. Yeah, we'll go with that. Whatever. These switches are individual printed buttons. I need to put better labels on these. This is select and start, and then we've got 2 sort of auxiliary buttons that are programmed to P for pause in most emulators, and this is hits the escape key, so it quits most of everything. I disabled the hotkey in the RetroArch configuration because... why did I do that? Oh, with the hotkey, the default hotkey configuration, you have to hit select and start together. That's common. But with these little buttons, it's hard for her little fingers to hit both of those. So I got rid of all of the hotkey operations, and now just a single escape quits things. D-pad's working out pretty well. It's weird. This is the exact same configuration as this side, but I'm not having the issues with multiple button presses on this side. I guess just because the space inside is different. I had a lot of problems with the shoulder buttons. I ended up having to shave off the sides, the restrictor pad on the bottom that keeps it inside, shave almost away, so it's barely sticking in there. And she's not going to be able to take it out. But, again, I think just because of my tolerances that I need to dial in on my printer, it was just too big to fit in there, so it was scraping against the sides. And then once you got it all closed up, you couldn't push those down well, or they would get stuck. So I fixed that. There was a little dial wheel potentiometer in here for the volume. Every one I could find, I bought 3 different kinds. Every one I could find was too cheap. They kept crapping out. You'd have to like flick it or push it or whatever, and it would not continue a signal through it. So I just got rid of it. I set the volume pretty low in the software on here. I might, if I ever rethink the hotkey situation, I might enable some of these buttons or the up and down button here to change the volume with the use of a hotkey. This guy, I actually ended up just cutting an old OTG cable I had that was about this big. and just cutting all the insulation off of it and plugging it straight into the Raspberry Pi Zero W that's inside this thing, and then gluing this in here, and it seems to work pretty well. I got a little glue in here, so it's tough to get a device in and out, but I can get in there with the with my manly pink X-Acto knife and fix that. The micro USB power works pretty well. If I redo this, I might make this case translucent if Vona's cool with that, because instead of rigging up another LED or something to indicate whether it's charging, whether it's got a full charge or whatever, the board that this is plugged into has an LED built into it that indicates all of that junk, which you can kind of see if you look through the side here. You can see that blue one. So I'd like to just be able to see through the case that it's charging or is charged. This side cracked a little as I was trying to tweak. There's a lot of wire in there. I really could use like a quarter of the wire. I'm just too impatient at this point to go in there and cut the wires and resolder them. Anyway, that caused this split while I was trying to shove everything in there. So I will eventually reprint a bottom case. And another reason this happened is that she wanted this glow in the dark, and this is one of 2 glow in the dark materials I have. The other one I have is just a regular ugly white and then green glowing stuff that it's a really rough filament that eats up nozzles. This one is softer, doesn't eat the filament up, but it also delaminates pretty easily if you don't tweak your settings really well. There's one little mono speaker. Oh, if you ever build one of these, most of the circuits floating around out there use this Maxim-based audio amplifier that takes the digital audio from the HDMI, and the amplifier is mono. Most of the schematics for it have the SD pin on that amplifier tied directly to your input voltage, which is 5 volts. I think whoever came up with that idea just thought they needed to for whatever reason, but if you do that, that device is configured to only take the left channel of the stereo output from the Raspberry Pi. If you do that, if you leave it just untied to anything, don't connect the SD pin to anything, it has an inline 1 mega ohm resistor between it and the built-in 5 volt voltage, your input voltage, your actual input voltage on the board, and that configures it for a stereo average of the left and right channels to the mono output of that amplifier, which is probably what you want. I mean, it just takes the left and right channel. So if you're playing any game that actually does have stereo audio, if you use that schematic that's out there and put tie that SD pin to your input voltage, you're going to end up with just the left channel. Most people probably won't care, but if you are playing a game that has some sort of stereo effects, you'll only hear what would have come out of the left side of your television or your display. But if you leave that unconnected, you'll get a stereo average, which means you'll get everything that you would have heard out of the left and right coming out of either the one speaker on the back or both of your headphone channels if you plug your headphones in. That's, I think, about it. There's a whole bunch of other crap going on. The screen is just not quite straight in there, so it's hard to read the bottom cues, the legend for the buttons. It's hard to read those anyway, so I might look into modifying the theme to change that, and also to match up my slightly customized buttons here. Alright, that's almost 10 minutes of me rambling about this stupid piece of plastic, so bye.